exciting times. I've bought this snazzy new lens, so hopefully from now on my videos will look bloody fantastic. And you thought I wasn't taking this YouTube stuff seriously. I mean, there is still the issue of my awful presentation and the fact that half my videos don't make any bloody sense, but at least we've got a snazzy new lens. I've got a bit of sellotape stuck to my arm. Let's stick it on, shall we? Right, you're back. How does that look? Probably exactly the same as before. Jokes aside, if you've been watching my videos for a while, I just want to say thank you. I know I'm not the easiest guy to support. I tend to disappear for a few months and then come back making videos on a completely different topic to before, but I just want to make videos that I believe in rather than kind of chasing some algorithm or whatever. So yeah, thank you for sticking around. Anyway, let's not start getting all emotional. This isn't a bloody X Factor. I've got a question for you. Have you ever received some feedback that was almost entirely positive, but there was maybe one piece of constructive criticism in there, and you found yourself focused on that one negative comment more than all the positive ones?
Under weaknesses, you've put eczema.
Or maybe one of your friends forgot to wish you happy birthday, and you focused more on the person who forgot than all the friends who remembered. There is a reason that you feel like this. It's called a negativity bias. It's why winning 50 quid feels quite nice, but losing 50 quid feels properly crap.
You lost $50?
This negativity bias is an innate human trait that means that bad things have a much bigger impact on us than good things. It doesn't make you an unusually negative person. It's completely normal. It's been around for millions of years. It existed as a survival mechanism. As cavemen, we needed to be more aware of bad things than good things. It was nice to find a bush of delicious berries, but it was a lot more important to notice if there were tigers hiding in that bush. But nowadays, this negativity bias isn't generally as important for keeping us safe and well. In fact, a lot of the time it's actually quite unhelpful. Focusing too much on the negative can cause you to make bad decisions, can stop you doing the things you want to do, can make you too self-critical and just make life less enjoyable. Recently, a video that I made around a year and a half ago started getting quite a lot of attention. Most of the feedback was fantastic. There were loads of lovely comments to say that the video had helped people, but there was also a few right horrible ones. Toxic dickhead, addicted loser, you're a slag. What is a loser? What a fraudster, attention seeker, who the fuck are you? So fake. Proceed. How can you spell that wrong? It's 5 letters. 2 of them are the same. Well, they should be. I can't even watch morons this stupid, attention-seeking Chad. I had to Google that one. Dude, it's full of soy. And that, didn't we know what that meant? Simple-minded, self-serving, you're a joke to me. Zero respect for you as a man. You're weak. Think you meant you're as in you are, not you're as in belonging to or associated with the person or people that the speaker is addressing. This video is not sponsored by Grammarly, but I mean, it could be. Just kill yourself and stop telling us all your business, we don't really care. She's calmed down. Now, I've been around the internet long enough to know that those kind of comments reflect more on the person leaving the comment than the person that they're aimed at. And I'd love to say that they will water off a duck's back, but if I'm honest, they did affect me a bit. In truth, despite the fact that for every one horrible comment there were 50 really nice ones, It was the horrible ones that really stood out and registered with me. That's because of the negativity bias. After a few days, I realised like how ridiculous it is to spend even a second of your life leaving hate comments on the internet.
That's what the world is like. People take everything personally. I think the world revolves around them, right? Particularly on Twitter, right? I don't know, I'm not tweeting anyone, I'm just tweeting, okay? I don't know who's following me. I've got 12 million followers. I don't know who's following me. They can be following me without me knowing, right? Choose to read my tweet and then take that personally. That's like going into a town square, seeing a big notice board, and there's a notice, guitar lessons, and you go, but I don't fucking want guitar lessons. What's this? There's a number here. All right, call that, right? Are you giving me guitar lessons? Yeah. I don't fucking want any. Fine, it's not for you then. Just walk away. Don't worry about it.
So that kind of made me feel a bit better about it. But I still wanted to get better at not letting negative things affect me as much, not just on YouTube, but in life. So I did some research into ways to reduce the negativity bias. So I thought I'd share those with you.
Negative, negative, negative.
The first step to overcoming anything is just recognising it in the first place. That might sound too easy or too obvious, but just accepting that your thoughts aren't actually reality is the key. If you fail at something and you automatically feel that, oh, everything I do is a failure and I'm never going to achieve anything, just ask yourself if that is actually a fact or if it's just an emotion, because those two things are very different, and I bet you it's the latter. It's just that right in that moment you're focusing on one negative thing that you failed at, whereas there are probably infinite things that you have achieved.
I will not hear your negativity.
The second one is just to be aware of how much negativity you're letting into your life. Take the news, for example. Everybody thinks it's important to watch the news, you know, to be an informed citizen and all that jazz. But the news plays on the negativity bias because the news is a business. It wants our attention, and it knows that we're 3 times more likely to pay attention to negative things than positive things.
What kind of impact could a steady stream of bad news have on your health? For more on that, I'm joined by CBC News medical contributor, Dr. Peter Lynn. How does seeing or reading all these negative news stories, how does that impact our health?
Yeah, so basically now what we do is we are constantly having this stream of bad news. And so what you're doing is at first you feel sad and you feel, shock for the people. And then very quickly you turn to yourself, right? Because that's sort of a survival instinct. Would this happen to me? Now that's normal. It's not being selfish. It's just basically survival. And that's why we tend to pick bad news. They did a study where they said you could pick whatever news you want to read. Most people pick the bad news because the good news isn't going to kill you, but the bad news, if you know about it, maybe that'll be a good survival instinct. Now, psychologically, it'll make you anxious. It might make you depressed if you're prone in that direction. Physically, it makes your heart beat faster, your blood pressure goes up. And so all of these things, if it's only for 30 seconds, it's great, but this is now days and weeks and months, and that takes a toll on your body.
Imagine if for a week you sat and just watched 24-hour news non-stop every day. Do you think you'd come out of that week feeling good and positive about life? I'm not saying that we shouldn't ever watch the news, but I think it's important to not surround ourselves with bad news constantly. Back in the day, that wasn't even an option. You'd have a town crier who would sort of shout out the news once a day, or then you'd have like a daily newspaper at the most. Whereas now you're only ever a couple of clicks of a button away from being absolutely swamped by bad news on the internet, on social media, all that kind of stuff.
Any way to sort of mitigate the damage it can have on your health?
Yeah, people were saying get disconnected, but that's not realistic, right? We need to have information. So I think sort of tone it down a little bit. So don't watch it every 5 minutes or so, and maybe read about it so that you're getting the information, but don't go after the videos and things like that.
Right.
So I think that might be helpful.
And this point doesn't just relate to the news. There are probably people in your life who actually bring quite a lot of negativity, that most of the conversations that they want to have are moaning about stuff, slagging off your boss or whatever. It's important to be aware of how easy it is to get drawn into that kind of stuff and the impact it can have.
Let's look at the positives here, Francine.
A few months ago, I started keeping a little Google document where I would save any comments I got on videos that really meant a lot to me. I wasn't doing that to overcome negativity because at that stage I hadn't actually received any. I was doing it because I wanted to kind of focus on that rather than like the number of views or likes or whatever that my videos were getting. But it's actually become a really useful way to overcome this negativity bias with these negative comments. You know, there's a danger that that kind of stuff, obviously I'm quite a sensitive old soul really, there's a danger that that kind of stuff could make me think, oh, I don't want to keep making videos. But I can read some of the nice comments on that document that show me that my videos have actually helped some people, and that alone is enough to make me think, oh no, I'm just going to keep going and block out the horrible stuff. It's also okay to share good news. For some reason, we are so much more comfortable sharing bad news and complaining or kind of highlighting our faults than we are talking about good news and sharing our successes.
We tend to think, right, that misery loves company, that venting will help get rid of our negative emotions, that we'll feel better if we just talk about how terrible our day was. And so we talk. And we talk, and we talk about the boss who's driving us crazy, and the friend who never called us back, and the meeting at work where every little thing that could go wrong did. But we forget to talk about the good stuff. And yet that's exactly where our minds need the most practice. So my husband, who has this disconcerting habit of listening to what I say other people should do and then pointing out that, technically speaking, I'm a person too, has taken to listening to me for about 2 minutes on days when I come home all grumpy and complaining about everything. And he listens and he says, okay, but what happened today that was good? And so I tell him about the student who came up to me after class with this really interesting, insightful question. And I tell him about the friend who emailed me out of the blue this morning just to say hello. And somewhere in the telling, I start to smile. And I start to think that maybe my day was pretty decent after all. Our minds may be built to look for negative information and to hold on to it. But we can also retrain our minds if we put some effort into it and start to see that the glass may be a little more full than we initially thought.
I wanna get next to you, show you some gratitude by making love to you. It's the least we can do.
Now this one is quite outside my comfort zone. It feels a bit wet, but every night try and think of 3 positive things either that have happened that day or just in your life, and sort of really focus on them. You know, even better if you want to write them down, but I haven't quite got to that stage yet.
There's research out of UC Davis showing that just writing for a few minutes each day about things that you're grateful for can dramatically boost your happiness and well-being and even your health.
I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but stuff like that has actually been scientifically proven that it can change the way that your brain works and make you more aware of positive stuff. Think of yourself as a third person. If that person only ever told you negative stuff that was happening in their lives and bad things about them, you would assume that they have a pretty crap existence and that they're, you know, not having a great life. But that is often what we do to ourselves. You know, I'm not saying, oh, we need to block out every negative and pretend that life is all unicorns and rainbows. I just think it's really important to give the positives their fair share of the attention.
Just be nice, right? You'll be okay.
When you become aware of this negativity bias that exists in everybody, it changes how you want to interact with other people, because you don't want to create unnecessary negativity in their life. Something you say to somebody else might just be a throwaway comment to you, but to them it might end up being quite a big deal. Like if someone kind of pulls out in front of you in traffic a bit and you start swearing at them and going mad, you're probably going to forget about that 5 or 10 minutes later, but you don't ever really know what impact that might have on that person. You know, it's an extreme example, but for all you know, that person perhaps had a car crash years ago and this is actually their first time back on the road since, and they're obviously quite nervous and perhaps that's why they're not driving at their absolute best. And you giving that reaction might send them on this kind of downward spiral where they think, oh, I can't do this anymore, and that then means that they can't ever drive to visit their family or whatever. Like I said, it seems like an extreme example, but it's not actually that unrealistic, and there are a million examples like that where you're never going to really know what negative impact your actions could have on someone's life. It's just important to be aware of what an impact a sort of drop of ink that you might give could have on somebody else's glass of water. I also think we can use this negativity bias as a useful kind of source of motivation, because sometimes avoiding the thing that you don't want can actually be a more powerful source of motivation than trying to get the thing that you do want. If you are feeling like you're really out of shape and you're going on holiday in a few months' time, the thought of not wanting to take your top off on the beach and feel embarrassed about how you look might be a stronger motivation than the kind of nice idea of feeling like, oh, I look quite nice. Or if you're training for a fight, the idea of losing and how horrible that will be is probably actually a stronger motivation than just the idea of, oh, how good it will feel to win. You'll run faster to escape a lion than you will to catch a butterfly. These kind of push and pull motivations both have their pros and cons, so ideally we'd be able to use a combination of both. But yeah, the way I look at it is if you can use a negative emotion to create a positive change, that is a good thing. Anyway, I'm off to try and work out how this lens and my camera actually work. But thanks for watching. I'll see you in the future.
I don't fucking want guitar lessons.